Hey guys, what's up? Some days ago, I was asked my opinion on predator females, and this topic has been one of controversy for a long time. I remember when we first saw the females on Predator Hunting Grounds, and some people really hated it and they're upset about it and just trashing the game because of it. They're like, oh no, they gave them boobs. Why would they do that? They ruin it. They're sexualizing the female predators like they do with human females. It's sexist. They shouldn't look so humanized. And I'm like, look at the predators that we have seen in the movies. Like, take a close look at their bodies without any armor. Look at the behind scenes from the movies, whatever. They look like dudes, like human males. Like, if you see their bodies, that is very similar. Predator bodies are masculine because the ones that we saw, even though it wasn't specifically mentioned and brought up, because why should it? It's not the focus of the movie, you know. They were meant to be males. So why would we be surprised about the females looking more feminine and looking more like, you know, human females? It's a fictional creature which is kind of based on humans. Sure, on their heads look very different, but on their bodies, yeah, they look very similar on their structure to ours. Plus the whole culture of hunting, which is something that humans also do. Mainly male humans do it, so it's expected that the same could be also the case for the predators when the writers came up with the idea of this species. Even though the ones in the movies were mostly implied to be males, you could pretend that they are females, whatever, if you want. A lot of stuff can be open to interpretation, except in movies like AVP 2004, which they specifically say it's a manhood ritual. Manhood implies that, yeah, they're dudes. Or when you have writers or directors refer to the predator as a he, like in AVPR, wolf is a he. I think that even in Predator 1 and 2, they're also referred as he. Even in Predators, like most of the time, yeah, they're supposed to be males. But I saw fans make such a big deal out of the idea of bringing female predators and make it clear in the movie or the entry, whatever, that they were females for some reason. I personally never really gave much of a shit about seeing female predators or not, be either in a movie or a game. If we had like a movie where there's a big predator clan showing up and you have some of them looking more feminine, we just get the picture. Like, we can read between the lines and realize that, oh, those ones are females, whatever. They don't actually have to bring it up in the storyline or mention or make any comment about it. Same thing in a game, but it does bring more customization and available predators to use in this situation. Sure, it's not something that is really that important. I'm more concerned if the game is gonna be good or not, but having the females in Predator Hunting Grounds added like some value to it, even though it was not such a big deal in my opinion, especially since the males and females don't really have different stats on the game. Sure, the different classes like Valkyrie, Cleopatra have different stats from Viking, Samurai, but between like the same kind of class like Berserker, Hunter, Scout, there's no difference between the males and females stats wise. The only difference is that the females are smaller, they have more of a feminine look, just more in appearance. Maybe hitboxes, but that was never like fully confirmed. I decided to do some research on what was the first time that a female predator was shown, and apparently from what I've been looking at the dates, it seems to be that it was in the comic AVP Deadliest of the Species. Terrible comic, by the way. Many comics in this franchise are absolutely terrible. But anyway, in this comic they had a predator nicknamed Big Mama, which was supposed to be a female, and she looked just like any predator that we have seen before. There was no difference at all in the appearance. It's no longer the case because Predator Hunting Grounds came up and it kind of retconned many of this older stuff. But in this interpretation of how they decide to bring up the females, there is like no physical difference between the two sexes. Next time we had the AVP Prey novel, which is a novelization of the first AVP comic. And then the author Steve Perry decided to bring up the concept that is mentioned by Broken Tusk Predator, that the female predators are bigger and angrier than the males. I imagine it like the Locust from the Gears of War series, in which the females are these big angry berserkers that look more manly than the actual males. This is also the novel that came up with the name Yautja for them, but this stuff about the females I think was only brought up in the sequel to this, which is AVP War, which was also based in a comic. In the comic versions, the female predator thing is never mentioned. It's just something that the author decided to bring it up. But the sequel seems to follow up upon the same concept. But apart from the stuff that Steve Perry worked, this kind of stuff is never brought up in any of the other media. Actually, the following stuff contradicts it completely. There is not much consistency, as each author has freedom to do whatever they want with some of the lore. And they don't really keep track of what the other ones did, because it's not like it's really that official, you know. If one guy is gonna make a Predator novel, they're not gonna check every single Predator novel that came before to see if all the information is gonna match up, you know. because it's not really official. The only real official stuff that the authors tend to follow most of the time, unless like they specifically mention that, oh, this novel, this game is actually canon. The whole stuff about Dutch on Predator Hunting Grounds and some of the novels, that stuff is canon, so it's all connected. But from the standalone novels, everything is like its own thing, it's like its own universe. The authors, they only tend to follow the lore, the main lore from the original movies. Whatever other novels, they don't really concern themselves. They have the freedom to go and contradict it completely, which was the case for the AVP Forever Midnight novel, which changed everything that came before. The author made it that the predators are hermaphrodites that change sex at handle. It's kind of funny in the novel, to be honest. At one point, one of the predators is getting moody, and the other one is like, oh, he must be becoming a female now, it's that time of the month and he's gonna change sex. It's a terrible novel. Very bad lore addiction that the guy came up with. Predators don't even behave like the predators that we have seen. They are not hunters anymore, they're more like slavers and conquerors. They are very humanized in the dialogue. It's really bad novel. They are called Hish instead of Yautja. Like everything that came up in AVP Prey novel is like completely like ignored. It's just like a completely different interpretation of how the predators are like in their society. But it's not like any of these were ever really considered to be canon of unofficial, you know. Also, worst moment related to predator biology. The author made it that the predators have this thing called killer gland at the back of their head or neck, and when it's triggered, they just go berserk and kill everything their way, including each other. And that's how the main character defeats them. He just triggers this killer gland somehow, and the predators just all kill each other and have happy ending. Yeah, it was very stupid. Next we had the AVP Blood and Flesh novel. We followed up on the Hish concept of the previous one, but it wasn't much better. Predators are actually hunting this time, and the concept of changing sexes is never brought up. There are females mentioned, but not much description on how they look like, if they are very different from males or not. Just that I believe one of them is mentioned to be very small, but it's supposed to be a young one, so it's expected. There was a comic that featured a female predator called Sister Midnight, and she looked very feminine. In the novel Predator South China Sea, the main predator watched other predators hunt through the galaxy by watching monitors on his ship. It is mentioned that it's a female predator that is hunting, but there is no description on her appearance. In the If It Bleeds anthology novel, there is a storyline with a predator couple. The male and female predators are not described as having any physical difference. We only know that it is implied that monogamy is a thing in predator culture, and probably the hermaphrodite thing is not the case anymore. On a board game called AVP The Hunt Begins, they also appear, but I haven't been able to find pictures of them from that. However, from what I see online of people complaining, they appear to have boobs. In the Rage War trilogy novel, we have something called the Widow Clan, which is a clan of female predators that have lost their partners. One is said to be very tall, but I don't remember if that's something that is said about all predators in this novel in general. There are some media that makes the predator a little taller than they are in the movies, but we also seen big tall males like Stoneheart from Predator Kronga Jungle before. There are some outliers in Predator height, so some of them tend to be taller, smaller, whatever. We had like a comic which had like a shorter predator that was called Shorty, so they just mentioned that, but there's not much description of significant physical differences between the sexes in these novels. And so we got to Predator Hunting Grounds, which finally decided to make it clear and official how the female predators are supposed to look like. And yes, this game was meant to be canon. Sure, they can retcon in the future, but as of now, this is how it is. Females for all classes are smaller than the males, they have feminine traits and a chest that resemble boobs. They're not mammals, so why would they have boobs? Okay, first off, we don't see any nipples here. I think it's just that their bony structure on the chest kinda resemble human boobs. They don't actually have boobs like humans, they don't actually have anything. I don't think they breastfeed like the young predators, they are not mammals. So I just think that it's more about their bony structure, you know? It's just that it's shaped in a manner that kind of resembles that, but they don't actually have boobs like humans. The most notable addition to the female predator concept is Cleopatra, an old elite predator, probably have been around ever since the ancient times of the Egyptians, and she was sent to deal with Dutch actions of killing predators around over the last years. She takes out his thing and leaves him alive in purpose to teach him a lesson. From the way that Dutch talked in the tapes, it appears she was the first female he encountered. I assume there are less female predators hunting on Earth, or maybe hunting is just something that the males tend to do more than females. And she came specifically because of Dutch creating some problems and just fighting against the predators that were hunting there. Something that I wanted to address was that I saw some people online saying that predators have a matriarchal society,
And there is nothing any media that ever said that or confirmed it in any way. This is not canon. If you want to believe that for whatever reason, that's your thing, but just don't lie about it being official. Like the whole way that the Predator Society is structured or whoever rules it, there's nothing official. There is the Council of Ancients, but that is also only mentioned in one single entry, which is AVP Extinction, the game from 2005. We had some novels talk about some Predator leaders, and they are usually males, like in AVP The Rage War. We have this old Predator elder that was supposed to be in charge of the Predators that are involved into the storyline, and he's a male. There's not much mention at all about females dominating Predator Society, whatever. I think that the biggest problems are the people that actually don't read the sources. There is a lot of fan fiction on the internet, and some fans are making it as their own stuff is official or projecting their personal desires on the franchise. Like when people say that female predators are bigger and stronger, and I'm like, that's a concept that was brought up from like only one novel over 30 years ago. It's not canon. There are novels that say otherwise. One is not more efficient than the other. AVP Prey is not more valid than Forever Midnight. Usually the stuff that comes last becomes the true canon, so that would be Predator Hunting Grounds, and unless that is retconned, the females are smaller than the males and look feminine. There is really some weird part of the fandom, and this obsession with the idea of a matriarchal Predator Society usually comes from the guys that you can expect complaining about the patriarchy on Twitter, and also people that make predator porn and are into female domination. Just my personal experience dealing with these people and from what I see online, and usually this is the case. I remember when we had the Valkyrie and Cleopatra being added into Predator Hunting Grounds, and the amount of weird people saying sexual stuff about them and making porn about it. Like, I saw some weird shit on Discord, you know? It's just weird. So that's usually where the whole thing about the female predators being better come from. Is not anything official. It just usually comes from the weird predator weeps, you know? Fanfiction is not canon. So I'm okay with the way that the females are officially brought up, which is by their portrayal in Predator Hunting Grounds, but I really wouldn't mind much if the females were never shown in any sort of media. For me, it's really not important. Same thing with like Predator kids. Oh, how do predators look like when they're kids? How do they reproduce? I think that some stuff is better left untouched and just not to be explained or shown. It's just better to leave it to imagination, just let the fans like imagine and theorize whatever they want, because sometimes when you show too much, you just kind of lose its mystery and just becomes boring. But in this case, I think that the addition of Cleopatra was actually very good, and I do hope that I could see her in the future again in any sort of media, even if it's just a comic or a novel. I don't think we're getting Predator Hunting Grounds 2, and I don't think this is going to be the case for her to appear in a movie, so even if it's just like a comic or a novel, I would just be very satisfied if I could see Cleopatra coming back, but just so we could have a rematch between her and Dutch, so that we could see him getting his revenge for what happened between them.